Think for a minute, what kind of health problems do you link to hormones? Have you had different symptoms based on your menses? Have you had different symptoms based on a pregnancy? You might have a fear of HRT. You may have been injured by conventional medicine before. You've seen medical mistakes. You may have had botched surgeries. These things can be painful and your fear is well placed. You might be feeling that lifestyle should be enough. It's always been enough. How could menopause be that different? Well, it can. You aren't hearing any positive messages about HRT. If it's so great, why aren't people shouting about this from the rooftops? But then again, think about how powerful hormones are. They'll change your body shape from a childlike form to a curvy puberty form to the vast differences of pregnancy down to a stick-like or boxy-like figure in your old age. That is all driven by sex hormones. We learn a lot about the immune system and hormones when we study autoimmune disease. Autoimmune disease occurs when hormones fluctuate and then our immune system breaks. A broken immune system can't fight infection. So autoimmune patients are really worried about COVID-19. But with a little knowledge, we can still make ourselves strong. We know that simple, inexpensive hormone therapies can keep our immune systems functioning. Let's start with some good news. The best news ever is that Alzheimer's researchers are actually optimistic about using hormones to prevent chronic autoimmune diseases. The more we know about hormone transitions, the closer we are to the cures. We know that women get autoimmune diseases during the transitions of puberty, pregnancy, end of pregnancy, breastfeeding, and menopause. We also know that systemic birth control, which is a fairly high level of hormones, will often exacerbate autoimmune systems. Women are 78% of all autoimmune patients. That right there tells you this is hormonally driven. We know that autoimmune patients in menopause will have an onset of a brand new autoimmune disease, or they'll have more severe organ damage. We know that toxins disrupt hormones and will result in a new disease onset or sometimes in an autoimmune flare. We know that stress hormones actually suppress sex hormones, and 80% of autoimmune patients recognize that significant stress happened just before the onset of an autoimmune disease. You know your hormones are sufficient when you feel emotionally strong, centered, social, and motivated. High glycemic foods or high carb foods also cause an increase in stress hormones, and that in turn will suppress sex hormones. Unfortunately, not only does stress cause the disease, but the disease itself causes stress. Working on stress usually pays out in some form or another, but it may not be enough. We also know that hormone loss, especially when there is organ damage, cannot be resolved entirely by diet. You will have some success with diet changes, but it may not be enough. Current research in perimenopausal, menopausal, and reproductive age women, and even men, is supporting the new use of testosterone therapy. Now, this is very, very recent. Only in the last few years have we moved in this direction. This is not yet considered standard, so you may have to bring this information to your doctor. The diseases affected are all listed here on this slide. We also know that in menopause, HRT is protective in rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, and psoriasis. Testosterone is critical to the immune system function. If you have low libido or low sex drive, that's an indication that your immune system is not functioning well. Many things in our modern lives lead to testosterone suppression. I'm listing a few of those here. Medications, obesity, opioids, alcohol, and birth control. We think of herbals as a natural, gentle option, but these may actually act like estrogen. They may also block estrogen. They may change the different forms of estrogen, or they may inhibit estrogen metabolism. And these things can cause problems for you. If you want the benefits of estradiol, and I've got 80 benefits listed on a slide to come, then you need to replace it with estradiol. In this case, the complex compounds of the herbals are actually not as natural as the simple steroid compound of a sex hormone. Our hormones work like a key into a lock called a receptor. And the key can fit perfectly in the case of HRT because it's the exact molecule that you used to make, or it can fit imperfectly in the case of toxins, which block the work of the hormone, or in the case of herbals, or in the case of pharmaceuticals. So that lock and key system opens a door. If it is blocked by another compound, it won't open the door and do the work. Some herbal compounds, like black cohosh, have found to work well in short-term use, but they actually have toxicity in long-term use. So this is something to be careful about. We know that pharmaceuticals can change many aspects of hormone metabolism. In fact, 38 drugs are known to cause lupus autoimmune disease. Many drugs can be eliminated with diet and lifestyle. I had one client eliminate 13 medications within a 7-week period. That was clearly remarkable. A note about perimenopause. This is a very special time frame, but we know that supporting perimenopause with HRT can actually prevent depression later in midlife. So decades of protection from using HRT in this period. This point is just the tip of the iceberg. I have a whole slide later that speaks to the many, many benefits of estradiol for mental health. We know that women are twice as likely to get Alzheimer's disease. Roberta Diaz-Brinton, the 2015 Alzheimer's Scientist of the Year, has done very in-depth research, and her research is involved in reversing Alzheimer's disease. She says that estradiol, or 17-beta estradiol, is the most protective form of estrogen. And so that is the compound that I'm going to focus on today. Not all other forms of estrogen are this effective. New products are not always better products. Make sure that you get estradiol and nothing else. So let's do a deep dive on Alzheimer's. Here are some brain scans. You can see in the red, healthy, active cells. Think of them as being warm. They're red and warm. In box A, we've got a healthy pre-perimenopausal brain, so reproductive age brain, full of hormones. In box B, we're several years past menopause. You can see the change in the red cells, and they are now moved to be more green and blue or less metabolically active cells. The white areas will show you the significant areas of change within the structure of the brain. So it's no longer functioning the same, and it's no longer structurally the same. Estrogen loss causes brain malfunction. The next slide speaks to the issue of the window of opportunity. Because we see such dramatic differences in the first 3 years around menopause, we know that getting HRT within that time frame may reverse your destiny when it comes to Alzheimer's disease. So this is very, very critical. Timing is everything. I will take a detour here and talk about the business of medicine. Dr. Brinton's lab works with 2 molecules to impact Alzheimer's. One is called allopregnanolone. It's a brain neurosteroid. And the other is estrogen-like molecule that stimulates some estrogen receptors. Amazingly, this researcher wanted funding for this 30 years ago. She was just recently funded after 50 plus other Alzheimer's drug studies failed. That's odd. Perhaps the generic molecules that are identical to what your body makes, those hormones, could not make enough money. You can actually cheaply buy pregnenolone over the counter without a prescription and have been able to for decades. Your body turns it into allopregnanolone that Dr. Brinton uses, and it crosses the blood-brain barrier into the brain. Allopregnanolone is helpful in neurogenesis, or brain cell growth. So if you would add pregnenolone to your HRT, you are putting together your own healthy brain support for dollars a day. Our healthcare system and the research that supports it is not about the well-being of the patient. That's really no surprise as we live in a for-profit society. There are startups out there with less effective drugs being sold to pharmaceutical companies for $1 billion. Everyone is looking for that $1 billion payout. We have to look out for ourselves. The more you investigate menopause, the more you will hear, this is a natural phase of life. It is a natural process. I think this wording is sometimes misleading because it gives us the feeling that we shouldn't need anything to help us through this. Well, one of your organs is going offline. It's very unlikely that you won't need help. We're really shocked and betrayed if we've been able to manage our chronic disease with diet and lifestyle up until this point. So it takes a little bit of getting used to for us to think about HRT. We might even feel guilty about needing it, thinking we're not working hard enough on our health. The truth is that adding needed hormones will really provide the necessary supports for the next 50 years of your life. Nearly every cell in your body is affected by low hormones. A body without hormone sufficiency, a body without enough hormones in the right molecules, does lead to symptoms and disease. So what's natural about HRT? Well, the molecules are really tiny. They're teeny tiny, and if you use it transdermally, it moves slowly through the skin into the bloodstream and to the tissues that need the hormone. My particular product takes 8 hours to peak and another 16 hours to decline. This is a very natural process. The product is washed out of your body and you are at baseline every 24 hours. Transdermal hormones are gentle. This is a very natural process. The other thing is that your liver knows how to metabolize and detoxify the estrogen molecule if you're using estradiol. These are molecules that your body made before. Your body recognizes it. It is not a foreign substance. It is not a foreign object. And your body knows how to excrete it. On average, when comparing HRT users to non-users across all of the products, including the inferior ones, there are only 2 adverse events per 1,000 users of HRT. And in the recent studies on the transdermal use of the exact molecules, there are no adverse events. I will talk more about the 2019 KEEP study on estrogen a little later, but this study showed no serious adverse events at all, and this was a 4-year study. It also showed that transdermal estradiol was superior to the oral estradiol. A 2017 study also showed that 73% of HRT users didn't have even mild side effects. There were no side effects at all. So this is how safe our HRT is. I think of HRT as more of a nutrient. Did you know that for some women, menopause is like falling off of a cliff? That's how dramatic the health change can be. Much of my learnings on HRT came from this book. This is actually the clinician's guide. This is what they use to train the OBGYNs. There are 200 pages here of midlife diseases. Why did I not get the lecture on these diseases? These are all hormone-related diseases. It was such a shock to me to figure that out after all these years. Our medical system is not set up for education, so myths about HRT abound. So here are the issues related to hormone loss. This list could serve as your guideline, your symptoms list. Pause the presentation here and take some notes. That is so depressing. I thought aging was a slow decline. Here's another thing. When women go through a premature menopause, let's say in their 20s, 30s, or early 40s, they know, or doctors know, that you will have this list of horrible problems if you do not have HRT. So they won't let you leave the office without it. And yet, at age 50, many OBGYNs will deny you HRT. In fact, I think only 1 in 6 or so are actually trained in HRT. So it's very hit or miss with other doctors.